This is a fascinating story, and it takes place just 10 days before Jesus' death on the cross. You may not have known that. It's very, very close to that time frame. And it is a memorable story. And it's a memorable story really for a couple of reasons. First off, it's a very memorable story to us. And for those of you who maybe grew up in church, very, very memorable because of the nature of this story. Zacchaeus is small, and he has to climb a tree to get a good look at Jesus. He's eager to go out and see what's going on. And so the fact that he is a small guy, that grabs our attention. And as a child, it was especially riveting to me because there was a song that went along with it. So after we learned the story of Zacchaeus, we got to sing the song. And all those of you who grew up in Sunday school remember the song. Zacchaeus was a wee little man. A wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree. The Lord he wanted to see, right? And so as a kid, that's a big deal because when you're little, you see things, you see the world as those who have power and authority are tall and big. And so this was like a big contrast for a little guy to learn about. There was a little guy who had a lot of power and a lot of money. And that just didn't seem, and of course the wee little man, I would always wonder as a kid, how wee was he? Was he leprechaun wee? Was he Tom Thumb wee? Or was he little brother wee? I was trying to figure out how wee, Zacchaeus was. He's a little guy. So first of all, it was memorable because he's a short guy, and it's a big story about a little guy. And so that gets our attention. That draws us in. But the second thing, and really far more important reason that this story is so incredibly memorable to all of us who've ever heard this story before, is because it's probably the clearest picture for us of what happens through the process of salvation. When man comes to God, and how immediately there's a work that takes place in Zacchaeus' life that's so life-transforming that it isn't a process, I'm going to lose 10 pounds over the next 5 weeks. It was he just lost an old man and gained a new one. Immediately, there was a process of the work of salvation, and it is so exciting to see that. It fills us all with hope, I think, as we read that story, because we get a picture of our wee little man, and we think, how can God change this man and make him bigger and make him what God wants him to be? And so this is such an encouraging story for us because it's really a remarkable life change. When you look at Zacchaeus and what he had done and in his life, and of course if you know anything about historically, they were collecting taxes for the Roman Empire, right? They're not collecting taxes for the Jewish people. So it would be as if America was under conquest and your tax collector was collecting money for China. How would you feel about that? I mean, it's bad enough when they come to get it for America, right? And they write you and say, hey, we want more, or you didn't give enough, or whatever. But what if your best friends were in the collecting agency, and they were doing it for a whole other country? And it was a betrayal. It was all of that kind of stuff. And so, as we look at this story, there are these things that really draw us in, and they become, big things for us. But what we have in this story really is we have Jesus encountering Zacchaeus in a very personal way. In fact, we'll see that he names him. He acknowledges him by name. And probably Zacchaeus, as we'll talk about in a moment, wasn't used to in public hearing his proper name. Okay, there was probably some other names he heard in public. And then Jesus was asking for a personal visit, a relationship with him, which is really incredible to think about, right? And then Jesus is answering or announcing in the process of this story that entry of salvation and transformation, the hope for mankind in his depraved condition. We see in this story what we experience even today in the crowd and how they responded to that. And we read earlier, or we heard read earlier that, but the people were displeased. When Jesus invited Zacchaeus, Jesus self-invites himself to Zacchaeus' house. I'm going to go hang out with you. The most popular figure of his time period says, hey, I'm going to hang out with you. This would be girls, young girls, if there's any in here. This would be Katy Perry saying, today I'm going to your house. Oh. For me, it would have been the Monkees. No, I'm just kidding. I'm coming to your house. Really, really popular, big figure. And so this is happening, and this is, and that says about the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of notorious sinner. They grumbled. And what we find out from this that we know already in our own lives is that people tend to like train wrecks better than they like comebacks, right? They really, they say they want, oh, that poor guy, bless his heart, or that poor girl, bless her heart, and but really they're enjoying the train wreck, right? They really do like to kind of compare themselves. We have this thing inside us that wants to compare ourselves to other people. That the famous prayer of the Pharisee who goes in and says, I thank God I'm not like that guy, right? I mean, I know there's some things that are a little bit wrong with me, but you got to be looking at this guy knowing that I'm better than him, right? So we're probably all square, God, I'm just going to, pay my penance and walk out. We're probably all good, right? Because we really do enjoy that comparison thing. And so in order to have that happen, we need some train wrecks around us, right? I heard years ago that Barbara Bush, the senior, the elder, I heard her speaking, and she said, she opened her speech this way. She said, I have discovered how to look thinner and younger. And everybody kind of looks up, and wow, she's going to tell us something powerful. She says, I hang out with people who are older and fatter. And isn't that the very nature of us? Like the comparison thing. We love the train wreck, and so this was the case in his time too. Let's get a definition, since this series is going to be talking about perspective. Let's get a definition, kind of a definition out of the dictionary of what perspective is. It says a particular attitude toward a way of regarding something, a point of view. Now, what we're going to discover through this series over the next 4 weeks is that it is entirely up to us how we choose to see the world around us. We can see the train wreck, or we can see the comeback. In Zacchaeus' example, we can see the reputation or the reality. We can see the thief, or we can see a brother. We can see the tax cheat, or we can see the Savior. It is all up to us on how we focus, but I want to propose to you that through this series, strongly suggest that through this series, a change in perspective will bring a new revelation and possibly an eternal life change for you. If you can change your vantage point, you are better positioned to see Jesus at work. Returning back to the story that we heard just a moment ago, it opens by saying, he tried to get a good look at Jesus. And I really think that, in all honesty, this is where so many people are. That Jesus was the most popular figure of his day by far. And he just wanted to get a good look. He didn't wake up in the morning and think, boy, what I need is life change. Because I'm really miserable the way things are going and stuff like that. He had heard through the grapevine that Jesus was coming. He had always heard these little stories, the miracles and things like this. And he thought, I'm going to check this guy out. He might even notice me because I'm important and I'm rich. But I just wanted to get a good look at him. And the problem was that when he got out there, there was so much of a crowd, and they were not about to let him, you're last and you're not going to get up front, right? Has anybody ever tried to get a front row seat when you arrive late? It doesn't work very well, does it? That general admission thing, people take that very seriously. We've even seen that for those of you who go with us to, how many of you had a chance to go last year to the worship conference that are present here today? Put some hands, okay, a little higher so they can see you. All right, remember how people saved rows and sections and stuff? And, we would come in and, you don't dare touch their stuff, right? Because, they did not want to be moved. And it just was frustrating. And when you have a large group, we had several, 11 or 12 this last time around, and so we needed a lot of chairs, and that really frustrates people, because you're making them move down or something like this. And this is what was going on when Zacchaeus arrived, this big, huge crowd, and he was too short, the Bible says, but he tried to see Jesus, but he was too short. He couldn't see over the crowd, and so he ran ahead, and he climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road where Jesus was going to pass that way. He wanted to see Jesus. Jesus was the biggest celebrity of his time. He had heard a lot about him. No TV, no internet. He had never seen them. And so he says, you know what? I haven't even seen a good picture of him. I want to see what this Jesus looks like. And that was his intent. And I think that is probably the case with so many people today. What's the big deal about Jesus? Why are there so many people talking about Jesus? What do people do when they go to church? Maybe I should go check that thing out. And I think it's our role and our job to make it as easy as possible for people to get a look at Jesus. And so he goes to see Jesus. And that's, again, what most people, I think, today are even trying to do. Jesus is still the biggest thing happening on our planet. Over 2,000 years later, there was a group of guys, I read about this recently, that computer scientists that came together, and they did this a few years ago, and they were trying to determine who was the most influential person to this point that's lived on the earth. The most influential person. So using various algorithms on Wikipedia, they measure frequency of mention, the length of writing, national origin, number of contributors. It goes on and on and on. And I'm way under explaining this to you because this turned out to be a 400-page book that was published by Cambridge Press. And today I'm going to save you $26. It's Jesus! Jesus, 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 by miles and miles and miles and miles. And I thought it was interesting that one of them was interviewed, and here's what he said about the book when he was interviewed. He said, "We would call Jesus the most significant figure who ever lived. With over 2 billion followers, a full 2,000 years after his death, Jesus is an incredible, successful, historical meme." And that is quite the understatement, isn't it? There's no debate that Jesus is number one. But think for a moment about who might be number two. They mention it in the book. But I'm going to suggest to you that, many of you who've hung out with me long enough know that I'm a big fan of Charlie Chaplin. And he's a well-known character. And so let's just say that Charlie Chaplin was, the number two person standing in line. How many... This is a guy, it's pretty amazing. He was making over $1 million a movie when it cost you a nickel to go to a movie. 1 nickel. And this guy was making $1 million a movie, right? He was quite well known in his time. And his legacy has somewhat endured, and he's a fascinating figure. But Charlie Chaplin, with all of his movies, his plays, the songs that he wrote, the money that he accumulated, great story about his money. He didn't like banks, he didn't trust banks, so he kept all his money under his mattress. He was one of those guys. And so when the Great Depression happened and everybody was going broke, that included these huge figures in Hollywood. He was actually a lender. He started United Artists together with a couple of other artists. And so he had an impact on our world. But let's think about it for a moment. How many books were written about Charlie Chaplin? Let's say it's 1,000, but I can tell you it's far, far fewer than that. How many books do you think have ever been written about Jesus? How many songs, hymns, poems, sermons? How many movies have been made about Jesus? Curiosity drew Zacchaeus to a rally and a change of perspective when he put a little effort into it and climbed up a tree. It brought about a life-changing encounter. He elevated himself above the crowd so that he could see Jesus for himself. There were no more, secondhand stories going to be passed down to him. There was no more crude artist sketches that he was going to look at. This was a serious spiritual journey for him that it was going to end in an encounter. I'm going to see him. I don't know what will happen after that, but I'm going to lay my eyes on the risen Savior. And so he positions himself to see Jesus. And it says in verse 5, when Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest at your home. Now, Zacchaeus was accustomed to being called a lot of names, probably in public. And the least of which would be his given name, right? So he was used to being called a traitor, a cheater, a thief, a liar. And it's possible that he was so accustomed to this in public that it was just strikingly shocking to him to hear his name, his birth name, called, and especially by this public figure who was a stranger to him. Jesus called him by name. It says in verse 6, Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house with great excitement and joy. But, you ever heard of a bud monkey? Bud monkey. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. I found, and probably you have too, that every celebration in life has joys and buts, right? Train wreck or comeback kid. If you live your life to please the crowd, you're never going to see Jesus over them. You're only going to see the butt of them. Right? And there are so many people that are living their lives according to the butt of them, rather than looking over the crowd and seeing the joy of the Savior. When he heard his name, he was so filled with joy and excitement. He probably missed 3 or 4 branches on the way down, right? Boom, that's a long ways for a wee little man to come down from a big tree. But he said, straight this way, let's go. And didn't listen to the crowd, didn't let what they were saying or what they were talking about stop him, discourage him, but he pressed on. I want to propose to you this morning that you owe it to yourself to get above the crowd and focus on Jesus. You owe it to yourself to press in, to sense and feel his presence, to know him personally. If you have only seen people who say that they know him, then that's not enough. You owe it to yourself to see him for yourself. And just as eager as Zacchaeus was to climb the tree and to see for himself what he had heard, what people had talked about, he wanted to experience. I want to encourage you to press in for your personal experience. I stood at the door of my home this past week with a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses. And we were talking about many things, but one of the things I said to them is you owe it to yourself to press in and to get to know this Jesus. He had claims in Scripture that you can't just throw out. He claimed to be God. He can't claim to be the deliverer and the healer and your Savior. And you owe it to yourself to press in and to get to know him. And I want to tell you something. When you have that experience, you will never again be at the mercy of someone with an argument. Because if somebody presses in with an argument to try to change your mind, you can say, I don't know if you have a good points or not, but I know that I've been with Jesus and he's changed my life. It's the blind man who Jesus healed, and all of them were arguing about how this must have happened. Were you always blind? Were you just blind recently? Were you only blind in one eye? Could you see out the other? What happened here? And they're arguing about this and arguing about whether it was a miracle or not. And he said, look, at the end of all of it, I'll just tell you my story, and I won't be at the mercy of your argument. You figure it out theologically, but here's what happened to me. I was blind, but now I see. That's what I can tell you. I didn't know how to navigate through life, but now I do. I can see clearly. Everything changed for Zacchaeus when he had an encounter with Jesus, when Jesus called his name. And it says in the verse 8 there, it says, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and he said, I will give half of my wealth to the poor. Lord, if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. A change of perspective brought about a change of heart. It's funny how an encounter with Jesus really does change the way that we see right and wrong, isn't it? How we can get away with certain things and we don't feel that they're even wrong necessarily. But an encounter with Jesus can change all of that. A conviction about the way we're acting, the way we talk to other people, our speech, our language, our thoughts, all of those things begin to transform. When we press in and we have this encounter with Jesus, we see things one way before Jesus, but completely differently after the encounter with Jesus. Zacchaeus had long ago given away his conscience about cheating people and doing them wrong, and he was able to thoroughly justify it. He could sit down on his comfortable couch in his wealthy mansion, and he could talk about how what he was doing was okay, and people owed it to him, and it was right for him to do what he did, and people cheat anyway, and they lie anyway, and so it doesn't matter, everything just kind of equals out, and I'm just taking my fair share. And all of that seemed to make sense until one day he met Jesus, and he called him by his name, and he had an encounter with Jesus that changed everything. What may have bothered him in the beginning was not troubling in his life at that time. But suddenly, in the presence of Jesus, everything looked different. And I know he had to be confused, and the people around him had to be confused when they heard his new testimony. I'm going to change. I'm a new man. I'm giving back. I'm going to stop taking. I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to restore to those who I have cheated. I'm going to make things right. And it must have been, a little bit confusing to him and a lot confusing to the people around him who knew how he lived and were accustomed to the way he was. And so Jesus took a moment to explain it to them in verse 9, and he says, here's what happened. Salvation has come to this home today. Today. This is what happens when salvation comes to a home. This is the result of what happens when salvation comes to a home and transforms a life. This is what happens when the old man dies and the new man comes to life. All of this is the result of salvation walking in the front door of this home. For this man has shown himself to be now a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man, and this is our mission statement as a church, this verse right here, Luke 19:10. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save those who were lost. Why do we make this our mission statement? Because the Bible tells us that Jesus became the head of the church. And the rest of us are the body. We're members of that body, the body of Christ. That's what the church is made of. So we kind of just put 2 and 2 together, and we realize that if the head is doing something, the rest of the body is probably doing it too, right? So if the head says, I came to seek and save that which is lost, then the body needs to be seeking and saving. Wouldn't that be weird if your head said, let's go for a run, and your body said, I don't know how to run. I don't want to run. Let's go for a ice cream instead. But ultimately, your head makes the decision, right? If you go for the ice cream or if you go for the run, your head is making that decision, right? Your body is just following, because your body doesn't talk back to the head, right? The body doesn't say, no, I'm not going to do it. The body just does what the head says to do. So if your head says, go get some ice cream like it told me last night, then, that's what happens. You go get some ice cream. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home. I want to invite the worship team to come back. Zacchaeus had one perspective at the beginning of his day and another one at the end of that day. I'm going to see who Jesus was his initial drive. The wonder of this story is and this is really where it hits home for all of us, the wonder of this story is while Zacchaeus was preparing and planning for his day, and he thought he had it all figured out, this whole day is about me just going to lay my eyes on this great public figure named Jesus. I'm just going to go look at him. What he didn't know, and what I hope changes your perspective today, is that Jesus was seeking him. He thought he was seeking Jesus, but Jesus was seeking him. And what I hope will change your perspective through this series is that I hope you'll start, on your spiritual journey, you'll turn around and realize that there's someone pursuing you. There's someone after your heart. There's someone after your life, your dreams, your hopes. There's someone that's pursuing you, and that's Jesus. Zacchaeus was forever changed by an encounter that began with a change of perspective. Are you willing to put a little bit of effort into your pursuit of Jesus? I'm going to stop running, and I'm going to turn around and have this encounter. I'm going to see Jesus. I'm going to spend some time in his presence. I was telling the worship team this morning as we were all together praying. It was not only the worship team, but our ushers and greeters, teachers that were here early in the morning, had our time of prayer. And I said, when I was in Bible school, I was in a group called Voices of Praise. We traveled around, sang on weekends, and one of the places that we went was in Baytown, Texas. It was called Lighthouse Assembly of God Church, and we got there 2 hours early, which normally is plenty of time. Empty church, maybe the pastor's there, somebody's there that's opened the building for us because we always phone them ahead, and we can set up equipment. And so when we got there, the place was full. There was a lot of people, and they were praying 2 hours before that service started. These people were saying, I want to see Jesus tonight. I want an encounter with Jesus. I want to see him for myself. I don't want to hear the secondhand testimonies. I'm tired of the pictures that artists have drawn. I just want to press in and see Jesus. I want to have an encounter with him. And it felt kind of sacrilege almost that we were setting up equipment and plugging things up, and we were trying to be quiet. You could hear people just crying and calling out to God, praying over the service before it even began. We didn't get 2 songs into that service before the Spirit of God fell on that place. Really awesome things took place. There was a hunger. And God always shows up. It says, that's one of the Beatitudes, one of the blessed. Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. If you want to see me, I want to see you more. I know your name. You may see me as just a great public figure who's had a huge impact on the planet, but I know you by name. I know your hobbies, your desires, your dreams, your hopes. I know intimately about you. And I want to go to your house today. Will you stand with me as we worship?